Federal joining us on our Monday afternoon panel, Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker. Good to see you both. Thank you for your time. We saw today that Sam Dastyari, the Labor MP, is calling for a total ban on political donations. That's a bit of a change of tune, Bruce Hawker.
It certainly is, and I think he says to the extent that it's constitutionally possible, and therein is the rub, because under some law that's been tested in Australia in the Supreme Court in New South Wales, they've established that you can't actually restrict the right of people to donate to political parties, or for unions to donate to political parties, or for businesses to donate to them, because it's an implied restriction on their freedom of expression. So, yes, you might be able to restrict the amount of money that's donated, but you can't have a complete ban as the law currently applies.
And Grahame, it probably wouldn't be too popular an idea once taxpayers figure out that it'd be them anyway footing the bill.
Look, it seems as if Sam is saying, look, he and the Labor Party for decades have been breaking the law, and somebody ought to do something about it. Look, I think this law is stupid. When you've got the people who are developing our cities, building our suburbs, cannot donate to a political party, and yet the thugs in the unions working in these new suburbs can donate. What sort of a law is that? Or some Chinese can donate and others can't. Now, it just seems to me, if I were running the show again, it'd be anyone can donate, but at the end of every month or the end of every quarter, the parties have to disclose who gave money. And I reckon that if you disclose and everyone knows where the money's coming from, that is much better than trying to say to people you can't donate, because people will get around the law.
Real-time disclosure, Bruce, seems to just be like a common sense move. Why haven't we seen this happen before? Why is it taking so long?
Well, I think politicians and political parties of all ilk are very reluctant to shine too much of a light on the political donations they receive. I think that's just a fact of life, and they have to be dragged kicking and screaming to real-time disclosure. I think that's a very good idea. In fact, I think if the law were different, if the Constitution allowed it, I'd agree entirely with Sam that we should be banning political donations, and or at least large political donations, and allowing only smaller ones, so the political parties have got to work harder with mums and dads and others to get their support. But all of them are opposed to that notion, and that includes the Greens, who routinely accept donations just below the declarable level, so they don't have to say who gave them to them. So they're all guilty of this, and it is something that needs to be fixed.
They're all as bad as each other. Grahame, on another matter, do you think we're seeing momentum today for this parliamentary vote on same-sex marriage? We've seen Dean Smith, Trevor Evans, Tim Wilson all seeming to hint they may be willing to cross the floor over this issue. And when Malcolm Turnbull was asked about it, well, some have suggested that he was giving them essentially a free pass to do so by pointing out that it's not the coalition's way to kick out people from the party if they do choose to cross the floor on any issue.
It's the same five people. Every time you ask the question, it's the same five people who say, oh, I'm going to cross the floor. Well, whoopee. It actually has to get onto the floor. So that means people like Christopher Pyne, the manager of government business, has to agree that everything else in the parliament can be set aside while we have this debate on same-sex marriage. That would surprise me. Albanese and Christopher Pyne have to agree to bring it on. Can you really see that happening?
Maybe that's what Christopher Pyne was talking about the other day when he was addressing the young Liberals, saying that they were in the winner's circle on this. Look, I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. I think it's going to be very difficult for them. And if they were to bring it on, it would cause such a cataclysm within the Liberal Party and the National Party that it would spell the end of Turnbull's reign as Prime Minister, I believe. So I think they'll find a way to put this back in the box. But it's a no-winner for the Conservatives, because Labor's promised that they will legislate, and I think in the first 100 days, to allow gay marriage. So anyone that wants to see this introduced only has to wait to the next election, vote Labor, and they'll get what they want.
Grahame, the flip side of this argument put by Dean Smith today was that it's political suicide, he argued, to keep this on the table and still have this as a live issue at the next election.
Well, bully for him. You know, the party
You don't think
decided...
he's right? You don't think this is an issue that, you know, could swing voters at the next election?
No. No, the party decided that the people would have a vote. And the people want to have a vote. It's a good idea. You know, I was listening to Mr. Shorten on all of this, and he's saying, let's have a vote and a plebiscite on what was it, on the Republic. But he's saying we can't have a vote on gay marriage because it's too divisive. And you think, and while we're on that, fancy saying we'll have a referendum or we'll have a plebiscite on do you agree to having an Australian head of state and a republic? You know, unless you know which form of republic, it's stupid. Somebody close to the opposition leader, look, he's got his nose in front, and somehow or other somebody is handing out stupid pills. It's like saying, let's have a plebiscite on marriage. Are you in favour of marriage? And you say, well, are we talking about gay marriage or transvestites or traditional marriage? It's just silly. And he doesn't need to be this stupid.
Well, you know, for a long
Bruce,
time...
what do you make of that? I mean, is it fair to conflate those issues? Because that's an argument that's been running a lot over the last 24 hours. Why is it, you know, a plebiscite good enough for the Republic but not good enough for the issue of same-sex marriage?
Well, I think one of the arguments that's put very strongly by proponents of a vote in the Parliament for same-sex marriage is the nature of the debate which would occur and the pressure that it was going to create in the community, which they see as being very damaging and regressive. The same argument, and by the way, it's not a referendum they're talking about there in the case of same-sex marriage. It's a plebiscite, which is not actually binding. In the case of a referendum on the Republic, then that's a different issue altogether. You do need a referendum, and that's the way in which you change the law. So it's not valid to conflate the two issues. And you know, everyone's been saying, well, now Labor's got to come out with some strong policies. Can't just be Liberal light, etc., etc. So Bill Shorten's come out with some very powerful policies on this, on trusts and tax and so forth. And now they're all throwing their hands up in the air and saying, oh my God, this is terrible. You know, they're actually coming out there and differentiating themselves strongly from the Liberal Party. Well, you can't have it both ways. You either try to go under the radar or you go over the top and you present yourself as a strong alternative government. And they're well ahead still on the polls.
But in terms of presenting a strong argument, Bruce, wouldn't it be better to come out with this is the model we think would work, this is how it needs to progress? Because otherwise we could see the whole debate stopped dead like it was, 20 years ago when we saw this very complex argument that nobody seemed to understand about the model process and what that would mean in terms of direct election of a president. It was all very confusing and we all know what the result was.
Well, I think it has to be spelled out how they would take this forward, what the model would be, no doubt about that, but there's time for that to actually be explained. I think it's true that in large part the Republican referendum failed because of division between those that wanted a quasi-governor general and others that wanted somebody who was a slightly different sort of a role as president, and therefore confused the debate and allowed John Howard to just come down the middle and win quite a successful campaign around that issue. So they do need to sort that issue out. I absolutely agree with that. But there's time to do it, and I think that will come in the days and weeks to come.
Grahame, it must be hard for Malcolm Turnbull to sit back and watch Bill Shorten leading the debate on this now.
Well, I agree. It would be galling, but he knows better. He knows better than anyone. He knows better than anyone. Unless this is a proper question and it says, do you want this form of a republic or the other form, it'll go down again. You know, and I'll tell you what, if people were to say, look, we will have, which is what the electorate wants, we will have an elected head of state, so you could have a Dick Smith, a Paul Keating, a Tony Abbott, a Shane Warne elected, so they've got a mandate as important as the Prime Minister, and they do something with it, then I'd sort of come out of campaign retirement, put on the campaign hat and run the campaign against it. Yeah. The other form of a republic, which is the Parliament chooses the President, that makes a lot of sense to me. It doesn't muck up the system that we've got.
But, yeah, the problem for Turnbull is that he's going to be squirming every time there's a discussion about the Republic, because everyone will be reminding him that he was the fella that led the Australian Republican movement at the last referendum. And...
Yeah, that's true.
And it does go to the question of his authenticity, though. It says you say, you know, you believe in one thing and you say another. That's his problem.
But he is saying very clearly, not while the Queen is alive, and I think most people would agree.
Well, he may well say that, but the fact that he's got to engage on the debate means that people will be reminding him that that wasn't his view 20 years ago when the Queen was still alive and was still the monarch. So, you know, he's got a problem wherever he goes when it comes to debating the question of the monarchy and the Republic, because he was such a strong supporter and proponent of a republic, and now it looks like he's arguing against it. So what you see is not what you get with Malcolm Turnbull. It goes straight to the problem that the electorate have with him. He is inauthentic.
Grahame, just to pick you up on something you said before about getting politicians to choose the head of state, how would you convince voters that that's the right way to hand that over to their elected representatives to make that decision? Surely that's a hard ask in terms of asking voters to give up what many people would probably see as their right to directly elect the head of state.
Well, one way of doing it would be, hey, if you've got a Bill Shorten or a Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister, but you've got a Paul Keating or a Tony Abbott elected as President, do you think they're going to just sit there and sign a few documents? Of course not. They're going to intervene. A bloke like Dick Smith, who would win. Dick would want to run the aviation industry from Governor-General. You know, once a person has an elected, a real mandate, they're going to use it on something, and that will change the entire system that has served us so well, and that would be very, very wrong.
I think I agree with that. I don't think I agree with that part. Yeah.
Ending on agreement, that's rare for you two. Thank you for joining us. We are out of time. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, I think we're just beginning to have that conversation again, a couple of decades on from last time. It seems like a very long time ago. We appreciate your time with us. Thank you for that. And do stay with us.